Next one I'll bring up. Let's see. No new questions on that one. Great. Yeast nutrients from Joe L. Longtime amateur brewer, but yet to use yeast nutrients for simplicity's sake. In your opinion, is yeast nutrient worth using in brewing mead, and does it have a different effect depending on the batch volume? Second, does water treatment have an appreciable effect on brewing? For example, removing mineral content and fluoride or using reverse osmosis water? First one, yeast nutrient. I absolutely think it does. So different than barley, different than grapes, different than apples, different than a lot of fruit. Honey is a nutrient wasteland. If you get a dark honey, you might have maybe 30 parts per million of free assimilable nitrogen, FAN, also called yeast assimilable nitrogen. And most wine grapes harvested from, say, California or Napa Valley is probably going to be at least 180 ppm, maybe upwards to 250 ppm of nitrogen to it. If you find these, what I call show meads, people are throwing in raisins and other fruit tidbits, that is partially to add in nutrients. Sometimes they'll add in, sometimes it adds some tannins to it. They'll add black tea for tannins. Sometimes they'll add some, lemon or some lemon juice or some citric slices, and that'll give some acidity. But in general, the raisins have been for nutrient additions. And that's why you find it. If you don't have nutrient additions, your mead will take a lot longer. For me, with using these yeast nutrients, and keeping fairly cold fermentation temperatures in the low to mid 60s, 21 days is kind of typical for me, using one gram per gallon of yeast in my typical nutrient regimen. If you don't use nutrients, man, you may be going for months. And not only that, you'll have stressed yeast. They have sugar to eat, but they don't have the nitrogen they need for metabolic processes because there's nothing really in the honey. So and does it have a different effect depending on the batch volume? I use the same ratios of grams per liter, and I've scaled a lot of my stuff up from 5 gallons up to, we do 1,600 gallons now, and it's basically scaled pretty linearly. The only thing that's really changed is the actual kinematics inside. The tank is going, a yeast cell might travel up 12 feet and then come down over the course of fermentation versus a 5-gallon carboy. It's only going up like 1.5 feet and then circling back down. So it makes faster cycles. But that's really the only thing that really changes, and how cold the bottom's going to it's going to be a different temperature than the top is. But I don't think the yeast nutrient have a whole lot of effect. Does water treatment have an appreciable effect on making a mead versus removing mineral content and fluoride or using osmosis water? I will say, I don't recommend reverse osmosis water because all of the minerality, there is some minerality you want from water. There's, in the brewing, my knowledge base with brewing is that the ones that brewers care about and can manipulate with salts would be calcium, magnesium, sodium, sulfates, chloride, and bicarbonates. But I know there's things like zinc in the water that you want to have. What you do want to remove is the chlorine and the chloramines. Yeast will process those and make chlorophenols, which is your Band-Aid kind of flavor. A lot of people sometimes say they got a wild infection and have some wild yeast do have a strong Band-Aid or plastic character, but oftentimes they're metabolizing the chlorine or chloramine. So carbon filtering your water is a good start. We do add some brewer salts to ours, and those kind of were in our early experimentation of pilot batches, and I just kind of liked how it worked with. I haven't done a whole lot of playing around or done various changes. I noticed there's a pH change with some of the minerality that we add to our water. Our water, we use filtered Austin water. It has a low mineral profile. I think the calcium and the magnesium are on the order of like 15 parts per million. The sodium is like 17 parts per million. The chloride and the sulfates are around the mid 37 to 45, and our bicarbonates are like 70. So, and our pH of our water here is 9.6. But that's what we start with across the board, and all of our stuff is carbon filtered all the way down. And then we add some brewer salts to it. And it's very consistent. I don't really know how much it really changes the pH. It works for us. Might do experiments on it, but I don't think removing fluoride or removing all the mineral content is going to really benefit the yeast. And like, especially if you're not using yeast nutrients and you're using reverse osmosis, you're probably really going to stress the yeast out. Robert asked if there's using spring water bought in the store, is that good enough? I would say, yeah, it's probably been filtered and it's probably got good minerality to it. And in general, I usually, if people don't have a filtration system, to just use spring water. It's probably the best usage. You might even look up, they might even have a mineral profile available through the maker of that spring water that you bought. So hopefully that answers a good